Hey everybody, I'm Johnny Mack, the host of the Soulful Hunter podcast. Thank you for watching this episode. If you have not done so already, please hit the subscribe button for the Washington Backcountry YouTube channel that powers the Soulful Hunter podcast. If you want to connect with us more at Soulful Hunter, go to Instagram or Facebook at the Soulful Hunter podcast. I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soulful Hunter podcast. I am your host, Johnny Mack. Through this podcast, I am on a mission to transform lives through primal adventure and to spread my mission of mentorship is conservation. This podcast is powered by Washington Backcountry, a resource for all hunters new and old. To find out more about Washington Backcountry, go to wabackcountry.com or search for Washington Backcountry on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soulful Hunter podcast. Tonight I am joined with someone who is very near and dear to my heart and someone who I have really looked, it's kind of hard to put words to this. I've really looked up to this person, even though our personal interaction hasn't been the most. I've known this guest today for a few years, and we met out in public land here in the state of Washington, and it was something that you just meet good people, and a soul recognizes another quality soul, and that's why we had to have him on. Our guest today is Jason Grove. Jason Grove is an awesome individual from the state of Washington, and if you go onto Washington Backcountry's website at wabackcountry.com, he is the very first episode in the This Is How I Hunt series. So if you want to know more about Jason, more than just the podcast, go check out the article that he did for us and the interview that he did on the website. So Jason, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Dude, it is an absolute blast, and this is something I've been wanting to do with you for quite some time. So I'm going to give a little background from what I know of Jason. When I met Jason, this was what, Jason, you think it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago? How long ago?
Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah,
so 2 years ago in the month of December, I was with my brother out on some public land just outside of Seattle, and we were predator hunting. And my brother and I were hiking around, and we ended up running into Jason, who was solo, and he was carrying a 22, and I was like, hey, this guy, he seems like a cool dude. And so we struck up a conversation, and lo and behold, he's a new hunter, I'm a new hunter. Washington Backcountry was probably just a couple months old at this time, and I knew that I wanted to help out new hunters, but I didn't have a whole lot of experience myself at the time, and I was like, oh man, I'm not sure about sharing this just yet. Well, the power of social media, once again, Jason ended up finding Washington Backcountry's Instagram account. He was like, hey, weren't you that person that I met out in the woods that one day? And from there, it has just blossomed, and it's been a really cool story. So today, we get to have Jason on this episode to celebrate his growth as a hunter and to really dive into what hunting has done, not only for him, but his family. So, Jace, tell us a little bit about yourself in regards to hunting. How did you learn? Do you have any history? Is there any legacy of hunting in your family? And dive into that a little bit for us.
As far as hunting, I had no prior experience with hunting. I didn't grow up in a family that was against hunting, but it just wasn't part of our family dynamic. No uncles or anything like that were involved with it. I was always in the outdoors. This story sounds pretty familiar from a lot of people that get into hunting, but into hiking, camping, gravitated into fishing, mostly fly fishing, and then find myself kind of actually hunting without a weapon. It's kind of hard to explain, but I found myself leaving hiking trails where people were and following animal trails throughout the woods, and just kind of became fascinated with what was going on away from people, like what was going on in the woods. Looking for sign, I started to find sheds, and I was like basically hunting without a weapon. Like I was pursuing an animal, and I just wasn't making that next step to hunt. And it took me a long time. Like I was kind of a creeper on some of the forums, just kind of reading and pretty apprehensive. I think the barrier of entry for hunting is so kind of daunting for somebody who doesn't have any family background or history in it. And I know it can be kind of a tough one because people are very apprehensive to share information of where they hunt. And I understand why, because it takes a lot of work to kind of secure an area where you can go where there's not a lot of pressure. So it's tricky because like you want people to learn, but you don't want to give away where you're going. It's yeah. Hopefully I'm not rambling on here, but
You're doing a great job. So really, you never really had a lot of history with hunting, but you had a draw to pursue it, and you started chasing and pursuing animals without the intent to kill them, but you were really trying to understand where they go and how they act and interact with nature and everything that goes with it, right?
Yeah, basically. I mean, I would even go when I was shed hunting, and I would roll up on elk. I would see how close I could get without them being aware that I was there. And it's like, well, I'm basically stalking this animal, you know. So it was hunting without the end result, I guess you'd say. So
Yeah. So what was the
yes.
final thing that was the push to say, all right, now I'm ready to actually pursue animals with a weapon and take my first one?
You know, that's a good question because I think it's been a couple years where I just been looking at information on the internet, and I think the main thing that kicked it off, and I talked to you in the interview about it, was my father-in-law, who was unfortunately terminally ill with prostate cancer, wanted to go on one last hunt with my wife's cousins, and they thought it'd be special if I went along. And it was an elk hunt, and it was in Eastern Washington, and it was modern firearm. And that was my first experience with modern firearm elk hunting in Washington. And it was a great experience to spend with my father-in-law, but it definitely kind of made me cringe a little bit about the amount of people that were in the woods. But it did drive me to find a way to hunt on my own terms. Like I knew there was a lot of different options as far as archery or small game or anything like that. So I think after that experience, I was like, okay, this is definitely something I want to pursue, but I need to find my own avenue to kind of start smaller. So when we had met, I was grouse hunting because I figured that's an animal that's the breakdown of it would be easier than a large game. Yeah, just kind of a low impact hunt, right? You don't have to get crazy with gear. Logistically, grouse are, I would say, fairly close by to where I lived. So I decided that was my first step. I was going to do small game. I was going to go after grouse. And
so when I ended up meeting you, how much experience hunting did you have at that point?
Well, you could say hunting or walking through the woods with a firearm.
How about this? How many years have you bought hunting license at that point?
So that was the first year that I had bought a small game and big game. I bought the package, I think, and I mean, if anyone lives in Washington, they know there's about 15 different combinations of things you can do. And I did elk, deer, with a combination of a small game license. And so, yeah, that was my first year of getting a tag and small game license and a hunting license, all that. But I had gotten I went through the hunter's education program long before that. So I kind of I got it done because knew I had to do it, and I just put it off. Work got busy, whatever. I just kept coming back to, okay, this year I'm going to do it. This year I'm going to do it. I finally decided to kind of go after it, so to speak.
Yeah. Did you go through hunter's ed as an adult?
Yes, absolutely.
So what was that like for all listeners out there? If you're brand new to hunting or you are thinking about getting into it, what was it like going through that course as an adult?
Actually, for me, I thought it was great because most of the people that were there were adults, which was actually really cool. I was kind of thinking I was going to be sitting around a table with
a bunch of 10-year-olds.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was I think there was one kid who was fairly young with his dad, but everybody else was either, I would say, early 20s to all the way up to their 40s. So that was kind of cool to know that, okay, people are getting into this a little bit later in life, and everybody kind of went around to talk about what they were interested in, what animal they wanted to pursue and why. So it was kind of cool to, not feel like, okay, I'm the only person that's doing this, because that was definitely not the case when I went out to that. So
yeah, man, that is so cool. So here you are, you're an adult, you're finally choosing to pursue animals with a weapon, not just with your own 2 feet. And you go into the woods, you start grouse hunting. I would run into you, and this is 2 years ago. And you, up until this year was the first time you have killed any animal, or did you get one last year?
I did get one last year. I got a grouse. That was the first animal that I had killed. Yes.
Dude, congratulations. What did you feel like after you shot your first grouse and took your first animal? Were you like, okay, I'm a hunter now, or I've done it, I've reached the top, or what was it, that the feelings that you were going through?
I think it's weird because these feelings have came to me every time that I've killed an animal, and it hasn't been a lot of times by any means, but it's weird. I go through, emotionally I go through, okay, there's definitely a reverence there. I took this animal's life, a little bit of sadness, joy that I achieved what I was going after, but then I automatically immediately go into, I need to procure the meat. I need to make sure that I do my due diligence to get the most out of this animal. And that's happened every time, regardless of how big or small the animal is. I just automatically go into that mode. Yeah.
That is so cool. So last year, so just to make sure our listeners are following along, 2 years ago we met. You've never killed anything. Last year you bought your hunting license again. You shot a grouse.
Yeah.
And then you decided you're going to put in just a ton of work, and you are really going to go after it. And you started doing a lot of out of season scouting and putting in your time. And this is one of the cool things that I truly believe in, and I want to make sure everyone understands, is that you're never going to outgive good. As long as you're putting in your part and doing your part as a human into whatever field, and we're talking hunting here, but have it, whether it be work or family or whatever, you're never going to outgive good. So you really started to apply yourself over the off season, and that took you into this year. So what were you planning on over the last summer and spring, and then what was your mindset going into this 2019 hunting season?
As far as like the summer and the spring and summer, I did spend a fair amount of time kind of reading up on turkeys, and that was kind of the next thing I wanted to do. The year before, I had hiked over 100 miles in central Washington looking for turkeys, and I was definitely putting in a lot of time. I was out in central Washington every weekend in the spring, and I never could get upon a tom. I definitely ran into turkeys on private land, that's a no-go unless you have permission, obviously. So I put in a lot of time for spring turkey and kind of came up empty-handed, and then set my sights on the northeast side, which has most of the turkeys of Washington. People who hunt turkeys know that out here, but highest population density, and hit that real hard. got into it with a bunch of toms, but just couldn't see the deal. And so then right after that, it was like blacktail's kind of been my addiction. I've always wanted, that's what the big first game animal I wanted to get. And I immediately got involved with heavily scouting. I try to keep my hunting area fairly close to home because I just wanted to be able to scout and learn as much as I could. And that'd be like after work or, a short afternoon trip on the weekend and putting up cameras versus going to the other side of the pass, the eastern side of Washington, where I just wouldn't be able to get out there as much.
Yeah.
I know
it's really I just want to jump in here real quick. You talked about barriers to entry, and I think with new hunters, one of the barriers to entry is the ability to get a lot of time out in the woods, because you're always told, burn leather, burn boot leather, get out there, feet in the woods is going to help you learn the most. But then if you're trying to travel 2 to 4 hours away every single time just to get in the woods, it becomes very intimidating, and so you spend not as much time out there. So you took a really interesting approach, and you didn't go too far away from home so that you could get out in the woods. And tell us more. I love it.
As far as hunting close to home, I was looking for public land that's pretty much actually very readily available, not too far from where I live. DNR land, the state of Washington owns it, and you can recreate on it, and most of the time you can hunt on it if you know the rules. So yeah, I started basically heading out into areas that I felt like were prime for deer habitat, as far as where they like to be, what they eat, and started setting up trail cameras. And I set up trail cameras. I have 4 trail cameras, so I'd kind of rotate them into different areas if I wasn't seeing any sign of deer coming across or frequenting it. So I was like, okay, maybe this is kind of a more dead area this time of year. I'm going to move, and just kind of started to cycle through a few different public land areas to find where deer would be. And obviously, if I found people coming on the cameras, I kind of just gave that area up because I figured it's probably going to get more pressure as the hunting season comes into play, because you get other people that would be setting up trail cameras. So that was kind of my big push, was to start to look for old rubs, for when deer are shedding their velvet, they'll rub on trees and they'll use that scent gland on their forehead to mark their territory. Look for old rubs, scat, just browse marks where they've been eating, and just kind of set cameras up on trails. And as I got better and better at that, I would find more concentrations of where deer were and kind of focus on that area. Kind of try to hunt smarter, not harder. Just okay, these are where they are. These are where the deer are. Anybody knows anything about blacktail, they're extremely difficult to pattern. You would get large mature deer on a trail camera and you never see them again. They'll pop into your life and then be gone. So it can be fairly frustrating. That's the only deer I've had any experience with. I know some guys are like, whitetails are the cagiest, and I'm not going to get in that argument, but I think for me, more blacktails were like, I was trying to figure out if they were even real, because I never would see one. I never saw. So in 2 years of hunting blacktail, I did not see a single deer that I could hunt legally with any weapon system. So, and I had a multi-season tag for 2 years. I had a archery, so I could hunt archery, muzzleloader, modern firearm. And that's a pretty long span of time to be in the woods, because if you stretch that out, there's a late season, early season, and I wasn't seeing. So I would see a doe in modern firearm. Well, that's a no-go. That was the first. I saw one doe the first year, but that wasn't a legal deer that I could shoot, and that was it. All the other times I was in the woods, I never saw any animals. I saw other animals. I didn't see any deer in 2 years. So
that's pretty defeating as somebody who's trying to get into it.
it and I think other people that have gone through this, it definitely messes with your head, because to go out over and over and over again and not see an animal. And I basically, this year I told myself, I just want to see a legal deer that I could take the opportunity to shoot. That's all I was looking for. Like, I was not like, I want to get this huge buck, or I want to do this or that, or I was like, I just want to see a deer to know. I needed some kind of recognition that I was doing something right.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have anybody to say, hey man, if you do this, you're I don't know what I didn't. So that's the problem with it. I didn't know what I was doing wrong, or if I was even doing anything wrong.
And this goes back to the fact that you didn't have anyone actually to teach you how to hunt.
No, I mean, so hiking was my background outdoors. Like, I did a lot of that. And if anybody knows, that's so different than hunting as far as movement through the woods, and you're quiet. So it's like I really had to slow down, and all these things I didn't know. I just was trying to like read information on forums to find out, okay, what am I doing? What am I doing wrong in this moment that's causing me not to see animals that I know are in the area? Because I had all these things, all these physical signs that there's deer here. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong to not see them? Like, I know they're here. And I would go out over and over and over and over again. And every day I'd come home and I'd just not have anything to. I didn't know what to correct.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have anything to go from, like, it'd be one thing if I spooked a deer. Okay. I was like, well, I was moving too fast, or the wind was blowing the wrong direction, but not even having any kind of like, trying to think of the right word you would use to
barometer. You didn't have anything to actually measure your growth.
I was like, okay, there's mistakes being made, but I don't know what they are, and I don't know how to fix them, so
and so you just, I'm impressed. So all y'all listen to this podcast, you got to understand, meeting Jason, him hunting on his own and becoming a hunter by himself and doing all this was so motivating and inspiring to me. Here I am, a brand new hunter without any mentorship, that I was really trying to figure it out on my own as well. And it was something that I know exactly what you're feeling, Jason, because it was so defeating. And it's like, oh man, for me, when I finally felt like I was a hunter, it wasn't when I first killed an animal. It was when I first saw an animal that I was pursuing. Whether it was legal or not, the first time that I went into the woods deer hunting and I saw a deer, and the time that I went coyote hunting and I saw a coyote, or I went pheasant hunting or grouse hunting and I actually saw the animal that I was pursuing, I was like, all right, I know that every single time I'm at least going to see what I'm after. And that was like, all of a sudden, like, okay, now I'm a hunter. Now I actually know how to pursue animals rather than just taking these random wild walks in the woods with a weapon. So
yeah, absolutely. And I would say too, once you do see an animal in the woods, I think it really helps you hunt better, because your eyes now know what to look for. I think if you're like if you're a mushroom picker, once you see a mushroom, all of a sudden you start to see more of them, because your eyes recognize this is what I'm after. Because you see pictures of animals, or you're on YouTube or whatever, but until you like are in that situation and your eyes are like, okay, this is now what I'm looking for, especially with blacktail, because of the terrain, it's so dense and everything. Once you have that, your eyes are like, okay, now I have an actual, I have something to like focus on and look for, versus just kind of, all right, something out there, it's going to look like part of a deer or turkey or whatever you're hunting. Yeah, I definitely agree with, once you have that animal locked down on your eyes, you're like, okay, this is actually a possibility to, have this happen.
Oh, totally. And not only that, it's like, you always hear, or at least I say that you always hear. I remember going into Cabela's and looking to buy my first set of binoculars and being like, okay, why do I need certain glass? Why is spending more money on optics more important? And the guy was like, well, you're going to be looking for an ear flick or the flick of a tail, and I was like, dude, honestly don't even know if I could see a deer if it was staring at me. But
Yeah.
when you are out in the woods and you finally set eyes on a angle, a line, or a shape that's not natural to the environment, your brain will pick it up and be like, hey, that stood out. And then all of a sudden you start focusing on it and you're like, there's an animal. And once you see it once, they start popping out of the landscape and it becomes way easier. And it's something that it takes some skill, but it's really cool to hear you say that you went through this, and to then seeing one doe all of last year. You put in all this time over the summer scouting areas, and then this year, because I don't know, I don't think we've let the cat out of the bag this year, but you actually were able to take your first big game animal this year, and you finally killed a black-tailed buck.
Yeah. Yeah, I was I was very fortunate to get I'd say a fairly mature blacktail buck, and I would have shot at well, I mean everything safety concern and whatnot, but I would have shot at any legal deer that I came across this year. I had no, like I said, no pretenses about horns or anything like that. I just wanted to get my first deer, and I was able to get a rather large blacktail buck. So
Heck yeah, you did. Don't let him be modest, everyone. He shot an absolute stud. A stud blacktail that when I saw a picture, I was like, holy smokes, Jason, you stud. I love it. So before we get into that story, this is my experience of Jason over this summer. He's scouting, he's getting into the fall, he's after archery wise, trying after elk, after deer, not really having any success as far as being able to see a shooter. He goes to give turkey hunting a go again, and I see Jason on the forums really trying to reach out and get as much information as possible. And this is why I feel like this story is very close to my heart, from meeting Jason in the woods to all of a sudden seeing him get his first kill and having it come to fruition. Is he was like, hey, what do you know about fall turkey hunting? And I ended up seeing his post and sending him a text message to be like, hey man, let's talk turkey hunting. And with Soulful Hunter and the Washington Backcountries, the whole goal is mentorship is conservation, and we're all about mentorship and giving back. I was like, Jace, I don't know exactly how you're supposed to hunt wild turkeys in the fall, but this is what I do, and so I was able to kind of lead you in a direction. And so you go from last year killing your first animal and being a grouse, then all of a sudden you ended up shooting a turkey in, what was that, October?
Yeah. Wait, was it October? Yeah, I believe it was October.
What was that
early
like?
October.
What was that like going, the baby steps, crawling all the way to running? So you shot a grouse, all of a sudden now you get on some turkeys for the first time, you're able to shoot one.
Well, you say running, and it literally running. I think I actually had talked to you or texted you, because we went over there for a 3-day weekend, and I brought my son, and I also brought a guy at work who was interested in hunting, and I was like, hey man, we're going to go turkey hunting in the fall. I've never done it, but you're more than welcome to come along, and I can show you what I know, which is not much, but you're more than welcome to join. I'd like you to at least try it out. So he was down to go, and I think we were trying to hunt turkeys with a style more like spring. Like we were trying to call to locate, and we just were having no luck. I mean, we were seeing lots of birds, but we couldn't get close to them. They're spooking real easy. So I got a hold of you, and I was like, hey man, what's the deal? Like, how do you get these birds? Because they're just like, when they're in a flock like that, you have a flock of 10, 15, 20, whatever. You got that many more eyeballs looking at you. So we were like trying to stalk these turkeys and just getting busted all over the place, and just kind of running out of running out of steam because it's like, okay, we are seeing birds, but we're not having any luck like getting within shotgun range. And you're like, well, you know what you basically gotta do, man. You gotta run after them. And it is so funny because I had just gotten the message from you, and we're going to a new spot because we kind of been driving around trying different areas, and we're walking through the woods, and all of a sudden, I think it was maybe like 7 or 8 turkeys come busting across this old swath road or logging road, skid road. And everyone kind of stood there, and I was like, nope, not today.
This time.
And I just blasted forward, started running full sprint. They kind of crossed over a little bit of a hill and dropped down. I ran right past them so I could turn and get a clean shot off. And meanwhile, my buddy and my son are like 50 yards back, like they're trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And then they heard me shoot, and bam, they come running up there, and there's a turkey on the ground, and my buddy swung through and was able to get another one. And that was, otherwise, if I hadn't ran forward and got after him, it wouldn't have happened. It just would have been one of those things where we saw turkeys and then they're gone.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, lesson learned. When you say the term run and gun, you literally mean run your butt off and catch up to them and then shoot as quickly as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was kind of thinking like, okay, run and gun, we're moving a lot. That's what I kind of was envisioning, and not actually physically running, but that's kind of how it had to go down. And I feel like if we didn't do that kind of tactic at that time of year, we would have went home empty-handed again.
Yeah.
And I was stoked to get a turkey.
Listen, there's no right or wrong on how to do it. You saw him, you found him, and you pursued him, and you got it done. And so you ended up shooting your first wild turkey, which was a huge thing. I saw that, and I was like, yeah, Jason, he's starting off his year strong. And not only that, you took a new hunter out with you, and you yourself have very, little years of experience hunting, and definitely not a lot of success with even once you shoot an animal, what do you do with it? So what was that like taking on this mentorship role, and why did you want to go down that road of mentoring another person anyways?
I think like as far as getting my buddy at work into it, because he had told me that he's just like, man, I really want to learn how to hunt. And I said, well, I'm trying to teach myself. I couldn't find anybody to teach me, so I wanted to be that person to him, to be able to say, hey, I'll take you with me. You know what I mean? I will give you all the information I have to help you try to be successful with this.
Yeah.
And it happened. So the crazy thing about it was this dude had never gone hunting before, ever. This is his first time he's ever bought a license. And I think his name's Josh. I think Josh is early 30s. And he went on his first turkey hunt, and he got a turkey. And I was almost kind of like, I was like, dude, that's not even right, man. I hiked over 100 miles last year to get a turkey, and I didn't even see one. I was just kind of like, dude, it was almost kind of like ridiculous. I was like, dude, this is the first time you've ever been hunting, and you got a bird? Like, that's awesome, And he was stoked, and so he's like, okay. And from there, I was like, hey, man, I'm going to go grouse hunting. You want to go grouse hunting? And he's into it. And I was like, okay, this dude's on board. He's enjoying this. It's putting him in a positive environment. He's outside. He's doing cool stuff. And I kind of felt like, yeah, I don't know. It just felt good to have somebody have that barrier of entry be not so hard, not so so difficult.
Yeah.
It is, and it's also nice to see someone else have success.
It really is so true that sometimes your biggest joys are, as a hunter, is not when you actually kill the animal. It's when the people you're with or the people you love kill the animal. And
yeah,
I
absolutely.
feel like That's where coming full circle. It's like, man, you got to be there and support somebody, and that's like the greatest joy I have is even having you on this podcast and talking about your hunts, because it's like, man, I saw where you were and the effort you were putting in, and just you get rewarded. And look at you now, you are impacting lives. Like, does he have any kids?
No, no, not yet.
Not yet. So one of the coolest things about getting an adult hunting, for all of you out there listening to this, is that when you get an adult hunting, you don't just get an adult, you get their family. And whether they have a family yet or not is besides the point, because the potential is there to multiply so much more, and it's like it's so special. So here is Jason. You're dominating. You're smoking turkeys after learning how to run after them. You help a brand new hunter get his first kill on his very first time out. And then you go a couple weeks later, it's blacktail season, it's late October, and you absolutely smoke a stud. But not only that, you got to share that opportunity with your son, and your son got to see how it all went down. So tell everyone about what it was like hunting with your son and being able to go through a process of learning something together at the exact same time.
So my son's actually been hunting with me quite a bit. We went hunting for spring turkey. We went hunting for fall turkey. So he was there for that. That I think the thing that I'm most proud of my son is that he would go out with me scouting for blacktail. We'd go through some of the crappiest, just terrible situations as far as blackberries, and just the forests out here can be kind of just daunting as far as getting anywhere. And he always stuck it out. He was always down to go. And then as hunting season progressed and we would go out, he'd go hunting with me, and we would see nothing over and over and over again. But he would still have that like drive to go with me. And I'm hoping it was also because just spending time with me, right? Being out in the woods, it's awesome to be able to do that with your family. Um, but he would go time and time again when it was raining, when it was crappy out. He'd always be down to go, and I always thought that was so awesome. And the day that I went out to when I actually did get the deer, I let him stay home from school to come with me. And I was kind of hesitant to do that because I kind of felt like I didn't want to lose him and have him get tired of it, because I was just going to go out again and not see any animals. And so that was kind of a hard pill to swallow, because I was like, man, I want my son to be involved with hunting, but I feel like if I don't start to kind of give him some kind of stimulation to there are actually animals where my dad technically is looking, like some kind of confidence in me as a father that I'm actually doing this correctly. And I just was really worried that he was kind of going to lose faith in that he wasn't going to want to do it anymore because I wasn't having any success. So, and that morning started out like all the other mornings hunting. We had put in quite a few miles hiking. I think probably a little over 10 miles that day. We'd gone to the top of a mountain in an area where I had seen a bunch of sign before and hit it pretty hard the day before. I had hunted about 12 hours that day, pretty much before the sun came up till it went down. And just nothing. No animals to be seen. Lots of sign, lots of fresh rubs. They're definitely in that area. And just kind of feeling like, man, what, running out of time here as far as the modern season. It was Wednesday and the season ended on Thursday. So I was like, okay, well, let's keep going. It's getting later in the day. Let's go try another area that I've kind of scouted out before and had seen, deer on cameras and whatnot. So we cruised down through, cut across the mountain, and we're walking across this one area, and it's fairly low. And I'm like, what's weird about that? There's probably deer in there, but it's so close to all this, these roads and stuff. No one's ever going to look down there. So we go past it, go up to this kind of clear cut area, and glass and rattle and call. And I go through this menagerie of things to try to to get a blacktail to pop his head out and look. Nothing. And it's also, I have to say, the weather for this modern has been kind of weird. It's been really clear and really, really cold at night. So some people say that keeps them moving all day, and some people say that they hunker down. So I really don't know. Anyway, I wasn't seeing any deer regardless. So we kind of started, well, it's getting kind of later. I think it's probably around 11:30. We start hiking back down the mountain. We're getting kind of closer to the gate where our car's parked. We're walking right down the middle of Logging Road. All of a sudden, my son's like, Dad, like there's a buck right there. And I didn't see it because he was like, we were kind of coming around a bend of a road, and he was off to the left, and I was to the right of him. And the deer was coming out of the woods on the left, so he had first sight of the deer. And I was like, yeah, right, dude. Because just at that point we were being loud, cracking jokes or whatever, because it was over. We're gonna take a break and go back out later. So it was the middle of the day, and sure enough, this deer comes walking out of the woods, crossing the road, and it stops and looks right at us. And I was like, oh, holy shit, I was like, don't move. don't, whatever you do, don't move. I just want to get this animal so I can get him in a position where I can get a clean shot. And he just starts walking right at us like we're not even there, or he doesn't care. It was the craziest thing. And then he kind of was like, oh, yeah, maybe that's probably a bad move. There's two dudes standing over there. Starts to kind of drop into this clear cut that has a little bit of a ravine. So if you're walking down the road, you wouldn't see down in it because there's blackberries and slash and all this stuff. And he starts to kind of disappear. And I was like, okay, this isn't going to happen. So I ran into the cut at an angle so I could catch him. And he's not running. He's just kind of sauntering down into this thing. So I got time. I book it into the clear cut. I'm like tripping over blackberries and falling and whatever, just trying to get ahead of him so I can get a broadside shot. As soon as I get an opportunity to steady myself, line up on his shoulder, and I let it rip, and he goes. It hits him. I can't see anything because I'm shooting a muzzle loader, so all I see is smoke. I don't know where the deer is or anything. So I turned to my kid who's up on the road still, and I said, what happened? And he's like, you hit him. He's like, I saw the bullet hit him. I said, holy shit. The whole thing kind of happened very quickly. And then all of a sudden in that ravine, I saw the deer, and he kind of goes a couple yards and drops. And I was like, this just happened. Okay, this animal just dropped right here. That was crazy. The whole thing was crazy. It was so fast. And then he got back up like he didn't get shot and started walking away. And I was like, oh no. I was like, oh no. I'd hit him my first thought was I hit him in a bad place. And that was my biggest fear as a hunter, was not getting a quick kill, a clean kill. And I was like, oh no, maybe I hit him in the guts, or, I just didn't know. Like 1,000 things started going through my head. And I was like, oh, I got to get another bullet in this muzzle loader. So it's because the deer's I definitely know he was hit. He was kind of wavering around, but I was, inexperienced to like what to do. Should I just let him be? Like, okay, well, I'm gonna try to load this gun again and shoot him again, because that's why I want him to die. I don't want him to suffer. And anybody who knows anything about muzzle loaders, I had a pre-measured vial of the powder, and I'm trying to pour the powder into the barrel, and my adrenaline is going so bad that I probably got I had 100 grains of powder, and I probably got about 45 grains in the barrel because my hands were just shaking. It was my first deer. It was a big deer. And I was just, I couldn't remember if I had put the powder in first or the bullet. Like I was just in a complete, I was just going, man. My adrenaline was so jacked up, and I was like, oh man, okay, I got it done. So I got it loaded up. Boom. I hit him again. He does he drops and he rolls and he kicks and he's done. I was like, okay. I just had to take a breath. I got my son. make sure he's okay. He's never seen any of this before as far as like in real life, like this all happened. And we both kind of get together and we walk up to the animal, and yeah, it's an experience that I'm still trying to figure out. And I've heard this a lot from different people. How to describe that in words, because it is so many different emotions all at one time. It's yeah, I can't.
I put it. I call it a spiritual. It's a spiritual thing, man. There's a spirit within the animal, the spirit within you. We're all created. We're all a part of nature. The energy is just flowing, and it just everything gets aligned, and it's the circle's complete.
Yeah, and I almost want to say, it's kind of crazy to say it, but I feel like the animal gave itself to me, because the way it went down, it was nothing of what I thought was going to happen hunting. The animal just kind of like presented itself, and I had the opportunity to move forward with what I wanted to do or not. And I took that moment and decided decision. Yeah, I've been working my ass off for this. This is what I've been putting all this time into to make happen. And I made that decision. And yeah, so now I have a lot of deer meat.
Yeah. Now,
and memories. Just doing that with my son, having the opportunity to be, harvest my first deal with my son and have him be part of that whole process. We went through the gutting process together, skinning, all of that. It couldn't have been any better. It was perfect.
Is he hooked now after seeing that and being a part of it? What's his take on it?
I think he was honestly hooked before. I think he was hooked when we weren't seeing anything, because it was the pursuit of being in the woods, not just kind of sightseeing,
Mm-hmm.
being a not just an observer, but being part of it. I think he really enjoyed that. Like, we are in the woods and we have this reason. We're going to get the animal,
Yep.
And I think that is very different than just hiking. And don't get me wrong, I love to hike, and I'm not bashing anybody who's hiking, but it is just a different engagement in nature versus hunting, I think. So
Totally. What I always attribute hiking to, like, point A to point B, you're all about the destination. And even though hiking is, you enjoy the journey, hunting, you have to be aware of the journey the entire time. And that's what really separates it. And, because if the moment you are not aware of your journey, that could blow your entire hunt. And that's so different than, if take it for this reason. If I was to say, hey, Jason, you got to run a mile, and you're like, dude, I don't want to run a mile. But come on, man, running? No way. But I said, all right, you're going to run a race, but at the end of this race is a giant reward. Go for it. And if you knew what that reward was, you'd be like, oh, sweet. Bam, hitting it. You're gone, because you know what that reward is. And so with hiking, it's like, all right, let's just go run a mile because it feels good. With hunting, it's like you see what's at the end, and it's this glorious thing. And not only is it impacting you, it's impacting your son, your family, and all the, how many hunters have you mentored now, even prior to you shooting your deer?
2. Well, I guess if you count my son, 3.
Yeah, and look at that.
I guess you considered him.
That is so huge, man. You are impacting lives, and you're just getting started.
Yeah. Well, like I said, and you had mentioned it before too. I think seeing other people engaging in that process is rewarding as well. I just want to touch on that again, as far as being in the woods versus hiking and hunting. I feel like hunting is a lot more immersive. Like, where's the wind? You're looking at the ground. You're constantly. I feel like when I'm on a hiking trail, I'm missing everything.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I didn't even know what a game trail was, what different tracks look like, and I spent a lot of time in the woods backpacking from when I was in second grade, hiking parts of the Pacific Crest Trail to working at REI. I was oblivious. I didn't even know what a grouse was until I was a hunter, and I was like, dude, there's these birds the size of chicken out in the woods. How come I've never seen one before? It's probably
Yeah.
because I scared them
Yeah.
all away before I even got to where they were.
Right. Yeah. I think that seeing somebody like get into it and they're like, oh, look, there's a sign, you know, you can just kind of see people light up because they're kind of in that pursuit, even if the animal's not right in front of them. They're engaging with that animal in some form, whether it be, looking at the tracks or, oh, this is where they lay down. I found a bedding area. You're close, right? It's that you also learn so much about your quarry or your prey, whatever you want to call it, because you have to learn their habits if you want to be successful. So you have to understand the animal. Why does the animal do this? Why does he not do that? Why do I have to, pay attention to the wind and noise and all these things? So it's like I've learned more about the animals that I hunt than I ever did. Just kind of, going through the woods or whatever. It just became, I almost want to say, like an obsession. Like, how do they, you try to get in their head, I guess you'd say.
It becomes
I've really
real
enjoyed
intimate.
it too. Oh, absolutely.
It's so intimate. Whether you with nature and you with pursuing the animals, it's like that, that closed setting where it's just you guys rather than seeing something from far off and being like, oh, that's cool. Okay, see you later.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to post this podcast and actually show a picture of this blacktail that you shot because I was blown away. This sucker is, I think, in its prime. I think this deer might have been past its prime, and its antlers were actually regressed down to what it used to be because that sucker had some mass on it.
Yeah, I'm really interested to find out. I just sent the teeth in to the state to find out. They're doing like a study regarding, I think, health and antler size versus age for blacktails. So if anybody's listening that hunts blacktails and you do get one, pull the incisor teeth out. There's a video on their website how to do it. It's really easy, but they will give you the information about your deer, the age. So I'm looking forward to finding out how old this deer is, because I don't know a lot about blacktail, how to age them or anything, but I would say it's a mature animal, and to get a mature blacktail for your first one, I was blown away, so blown away by the animal, because it was, it's kind of hard to explain this, but I feel like it represented all the work that I had put into hunting blacktail. And I don't know, that doesn't sound like arrogant or anything like that, because it's not. I was just like, man, this represents all the hard work that I have put into this, like years of work. And if it was a spike blacktail, I would have felt the same exact way.
Yeah.
But just to have the animal obtainable, it was such a reward,
Yep.
But yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful blacktail. And I feel like I'm screwed now because I don't know, what I mean? Like, now what?
Well,
where am I going to go?
You can check off blacktail and move on to elk or maybe a mule deer.
Holy smokes, he's a masher. I was just like, wow, this is unbelievable.
That's awesome. So, have you and your family had any of the meat yet?
We did eat the heart. I always eat the heart of all the animals. And it was really good. We fried it up, and a little tip on cooking the heart. And I was kind of reading about this, slicing it up and leaving it in salt water for 12 hours will pull kind of all the iron taste out of it. And we sauteed it up with some garlic and onion and put it over some basmati rice. It was really good.
Man, that's pretty cool. And looking on your Instagram account, one of the shots definitely hit the heart. So, you ate the heart even though you still put a bullet through it.
Yeah, I just kind of cut that away. And both, like I said, I had taken another shot to put the animal down as quick as possible. And after coming upon the animal, I realized I didn't need to do that. The two shots were almost, I think they were probably, I don't know, maybe 2 inches apart, and they were both in an area that, well, one skidded across the heart, and the other one was just behind it. So the animal died very quickly. So that was another big concern for me, is just having the least amount of suffering, for the animal. I think we owe it to the animal to be, practice with your weapon system, whatever it may be. If you're an archer or rifle hunter or muzzleloader, just to be proficient.
Yeah,
So,
totally. So what's next for you?
The next is to try to get my son a black-tailed deer. He has a modern tag, and I wish I would have known that he was so interested, because I would have put in for the multi-season tag for him as well. Because I was trying to figure out if he was going to do big game or not this year, and I kind of wish that I had preemptively done that, because you can't get the multi-season tag unless you applied for it, which is kind of a strange deal, because they usually have a surplus for them, for deer. So we're going to try to hit it hard for the modern late season, which is, I believe, the 14th through the 17th. And actually, this is kind of a cool idea that I've had, is I took the forehead scent gland out of the buck that I have, and I've been rubbing it on rubs in the area that we're going to be hunting, and I put a trail camera on it to see if I can lure in another buck with the scent of the animal that I killed.
That's awesome.
I kind of got all gloved up and gonna give that a whirl. That's a Tom Ryle secret special move there.
Right, the blacktail master himself, Tom Ryle. Tom, if you're listening to this, we're stealing all your tricks. Thanks, man.
So I don't know if it'll work or not, but it's kind of a cool idea. And he had also talked about, like, finding the sheds of a deer and trying to rattle that deer in with them, just kind of like that'd be the mystique of pulling a blacktail out of the woods like that. So, but either way, I mean, yeah, that's the plan for the deer hunting season. And then I have an archery elk tag for late. I'm gonna do late archery elk. And I wish I had a better plan for that, but I spent most of my summer and fall really hammering on the blacktail scene. So
yeah, I think you did all right with your deer. So
oh yeah, man, I'm stoked. I can't. Yeah, I'm definitely going out for elk for sure, but I'm still kind of riding the high of getting that deer, because it's your first deer, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, totally.
So,
Jace, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. How can listeners find you, get a hold of you, or see pictures of this animal and your adventures that you have been on?
So I am on Instagram at Manakaya. That's kind of a long one. It's Manakih. That's my middle name. Can thank my parents for that. That's a little bit of
that's funny. I always wondered how you came up with that name, Manakaya.
Yeah, that's from my folks. It's 2 different languages. It's man, which is English, Kaya, which is Kaya is God in a bunch of different languages. So man of God, that's what they named me. So it's pretty unique, and so that's where that comes from. So everybody's wondering what the hell that means.
I dig it. I love it. You are a stud. Thank you so much. All of y'all listeners out there, go check out Jason's article he did with Washington Backcountry on the series This Is How I Hunt. Jason, thanks for coming on, sharing your story about your growth as a hunter and being able to give back to the hunting community through mentoring not only your son, but also 2 other adults. And the ripple effect is real. And just remember, man, you can never outgive good. So, Jace, thank you for coming on. Everyone, stay soulful. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. Make sure to leave a review, and we'll catch you next time on the Soulful Hunter podcast. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I'd love it if you could go ahead and give this a rating as well as subscribe. Also, you can check us out on Instagram under the Soulful Hunter Podcast. Make sure to tag us in pictures and posts and use the hashtag Soulful Hunter. To find out more about the Soulful Hunter Podcast, go to soulfulhunter.com and be sure to follow the podcast as we are going to be bringing you a lot of great information, insight, and changing lives through primal adventure. I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Stay tuned and stay soulful.